Hello and welcome to Super Respectable. My name is Toshio Rahman and this is David Lewis. Dave?
Hey,
Hey, it's we're recording on November the 3rd. Today is election day in America. And just as we were saying right before we started, we're both a little jittery, even though we're not
yeah, I
Americans.
had a couple
It's a little
coffees,
rough.
but I don't think it's just the coffee. It's just tension.
I think it's very common. I think Americans probably feel it the most because it's their home country, but I think a lot of people around this world are looking at today with some anxiety. Who knows what'll happen?
Yeah, there's been a lot to be nervous and anxious about this year, and the U.S. presidential election isn't helping things. So I just hope that there's a normal outcome, like that doesn't descend into some sort of ridiculous civil war or something. Because
Yeah,
we talked about like shopkeepers boarding up their
doors.
restaurants and doors in Washington and other cities. And it's like, is that really America in 2020?
I
Hey.
uh, I don't know. I mean, I think the uncertainty is definitely a part of it. COVID is a part of it. The kind of how Trump has been leading up to the election and how he'll react is a part of it as well. I think I was telling you right before we recorded, one of the scary things is that if it's too close, the results might not be as instantaneous as we want it to be, right? It might not be today. It might not even be in a week. It could be in a month, like happened with Al Gore and Bush back in 2000.
Yeah, I remember like that one. It was a semi-civil discourse back then.
Mm,
Of course, elections get ugly, but nothing like today, where it's just really, really bitter and nasty. And
yeah,
then that dragged on. It went to the Supreme Court. There were the hanging chads with the ballots.
totally.
And
36 days. Yeah.
if it's a close election this time, who knows what's going to happen? So yeah, all bets are
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, this morning I was listening to just the radio, and they were kind of going through past election counts and election days. And in that scenario, Gore versus Bush in 2000, Gore actually conceded, right? He actually initially conceded, but then he called an hour later and he took it back. And
Yeah,
then,
just kidding.
but then in 36 days, when even though he disagreed with the court's decision, he still conceded as a dignified politician. But I think this scenario is a little bit more problematic because I don't think we can put the words dignified and Trump in the same sentence. So who knows what'll happen, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the interesting part for me, there's many interesting parts, but like
Mhm.
there's the handover element in January, when
Transition.
Obama and Trump had to shake hands and talk to each other awkwardly after, Trump said all these things about him not being
Totally.
bored and
Yeah, yeah,
his birth certificate and really going after him. And they had to like be civil for the cameras. And Trump was pretty well behaved then
yeah.
and semi-presidential. But like, what's going to happen if Biden wins and they got to sit down together? Is he just going to be really antagonistic and bullying? And I don't know.
So I read a really interesting article the other day about how some inside the Trump White House are already preparing for a transition if it were to happen. And there was a couple people who would do it. They were saying in a positive way, like they knew the rules and they didn't follow in the same mindset as Trump and his cabinet.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of people who are, I think, and I think one is really high up. I think it's his chief of staff or whatnot, but they would be preparing for a transition. And usually, I think in these scenarios, you'd hope that that period would be smooth and non-tumultuous. And yeah, but under Trump, I just feel like if he loses, he's going to make an issue of it. And if he loses and he knows that he's only got 2.5 months left, he's going to put a lot of legislation through that's not going to be beneficial. And Biden will just have to spend his first couple of years just untying all these problems like that they do. And
Can you do that? Like, I guess in the November to January period, like post election, can like the president do all these final votes and actions, or they lost
I
that
think
power? They can pardon people. I know that like Bill Clinton pardoned some
pardoned a lot of people. Yeah,
pretty interesting characters in his like final acts, but I'm not sure. Like, I
if
guess
you're
you're still technically president, right, until
president, yeah.
January 20th.
I'm just guessing. If I was my guess, you'd probably need the support of the two houses, which he has, right? Or doesn't he? I mean, yeah,
He's got one.
he's got one, but he just got a Supreme Court judge through, right? So
Yeah.
Amy, blah 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 blah. And so like, I guess, I mean, American politics is so like decisive in that it's like it's just if you're this party, you're like opposed to this party, and it's just insanity. Because like the other day, I was listening to a Republican, not a politician, but a Republican who was sorry, a conservative. He made it very clear: I'm a conservative ideologist, but not a Republican. And he made a really good case for his ideologies, but he wasn't a Trump supporter. He said that this is not the Republican Party that I knew or I grew up on. I believe in smaller government, more business, blah blah blah. And he made a really good argument, which I think is, and he said that, listen, like we've come to a point where like the way we're playing politics is so dirty. In the other days, we used to play the numbers. We didn't do anything dirty, but we knew that if, for example, like if we were like in this state, it was always Democrat, we'd have to put like he was very strategic with it, and he played the game fairly, which I respect. But
Mm.
like I think coming out and really just kind of doing what's beneficial for yourself and not for your party, and just I think the only person Trump cares about is himself, right? Like I don't think he really cares about anything else. So like I don't know. I think a lot of damage has been caused in the last 4 years, nationally and internationally. Whether Trump stays or Biden comes in, it's going to be a a huge problem to untie if that's the case, or it'll just be a bigger knot for another 4 years. I don't know. It's
Who
difficult.
knows? Who knows?
It's difficult. Anyways, let's move
It's
to a
chaos.
positive topic of COVID. How's that going?
Oh
Uh,
yeah. What other positive topics do we have? We have COVID. Yeah.
mhm.
COVID. Yeah. There's another press conference tonight here in the Netherlands.
Wow.
As things work here, everything's been leaked ahead of time, and we already know what's going to happen.
Oh
So
yeah.
the museums are going to close, the cinemas are going to shut. I didn't get a chance to watch any more movies at the cinema, as we talked about last week, so I
Yeah.
didn't use that opportunity. And apparently, they're going to say no travel at Christmas, but I don't think they're going to enforce it. They'll just say, don't go anywhere, don't go skiing, don't go see your family.
Is it right to say that the numbers have gotten worse since the last time we spoke?
They've
Or
kind of held somewhat steady, but it's held steady at a pretty high number. So I think most other countries would find the number like absolutely unacceptable.
yeah,
Um, but here we're getting to be around between 8 and 10,000 cases a day, which is quite a
mm,
lot.
especially for a
Um,
population not so large
yeah,
as yours.
yeah. So I think the idea is they're starting to see maybe a dip in the numbers, and then if they put in tighter measures, they can like really work to push it down more. But we shall see. We shall see. And you, how's it going over there?
It's okay. I was telling uh, my wife the other day that like I think the numbers are not great. To be honest, I haven't checked. Like, but based on my observations, I feel that like everyone wears masks, but everyone's still out and about and doing their thing, and like the country's operating as normal. So like either they've done a really great job of controlling everything, or they're not being as forthright with the data as possible. And I think it's the latter, not the former, because airports are open, tourism's open, people are coming and going, but I will have to double check on the numbers. But I mean, I'm kind of getting a little depressed with the situation. Like my sister lives in the UK, as does your family too. And like in the
Yeah,
UK, they're going into lockdown as of tomorrow for a month,
and maybe
um,
longer.
maybe
Um,
longer. Back home, it's not as bad as the UK, but it is like not great. Yeah, like I just feel like there's nowhere you can go. My dad is in town, and he had to do two COVID tests before getting here. So he did one 3 days before leaving, and then he did one on the day of. Thankfully, it was negative on both, a PCR test, so he was okay. But yeah, I don't know how much longer I can kind of start living like this. It's gone crazy. And you shared. We'll post it. You shared with me a trailer for a movie they made about COVID, like in the last couple months. A big blockbuster too.
was it Michael
So
Bay or Jerry Bruckheimer? I don't know which one, but yeah, I don't know how they filmed it. They must have just closed off part of some studio in Hollywood and had a very distanced film set. And yeah, it's a bit too soon, I think, for that
I
kind of
agree.
movie.
Well, first of all, we can't even go see it in the cinema, so it might be released on like
You can't see it.
online. But yeah, I guess it's Hollywood. They always try to find something to capitalize on, and if it's timely, then it's relevant, and if it's relevant, then it's a moneymaker, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, let's start with today's.
Anyhow.
So I totally non-political today's episode. It has to do with our country of Canada. So I thought we'd go
Oh,
back. home. We haven't gone home. I do have to give a little bit of a warning to listeners, though. It is somewhat gruesome. So, like, it does involve a murder, but a little bit of a gruesome murder. And I think you'll know what we're talking about. So, it's the killing of Tim McLean. Do you know the name?
Maybe.
He's
No.
he's the kid who was on the Greyhound bus and he got beheaded.
Oh no, not that one.
I'm sorry, but
Okay.
I felt like it was interesting because I actually looked into it. It's not as clear cut as it, and there's a twist. There's a twist. Yeah.
Sorry, just for me, the reason why it's exceptionally traumatic for me is I was on a Greyhound bus when I learned of the Greyhound bus murder, so it really frightened me.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. There's a twist ending which I didn't know until I researched it, and then I don't think I'll take a Greyhound bus ever again. So I'm okay, But what happened is that on July 30th, 2008, Tim McLean, a 22-year-old Canadian boy from my home province of BC, was stabbed, beheaded, and cannibalized while riding a Greyhound bus along the Trans-Canada Highway. It's really gruesome, you guys. So again, a warning, but I won't go into like the small little, like the disgusting parts of it. I'll look at the overall picture. But quick question, Dave. The Trans-Canada Highway, it's highway number 1, if I'm correct, right?
I would assume so.
Okay, let's say it's highway number 1. I think it goes from Vancouver all the way out to the most eastern part of the country before the islands, right? Like it goes across the country through every major city or close to every major city, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Have you ever done a nationwide road trip or partial nationwide road trip or provincial road trip?
I haven't, and I have no desire to, but we did like, yeah,
You're not
we
a good
did
Canadian.
as a family. We did from Ottawa, my hometown, to the East Coast to Prince Edward Island, which was quite a drive, and that was like enough. For me, I just get cabin fever inside a car, and I would do the train travel. So I would do like the Via. My parents did the cross Canada Via train journey, and I would do that because you can talk to people and move inside the cabin.
Around. Yeah, trains are nicer. Yeah,
read a book. Whereas when you're driving, you always have to be like tense and seeing how much gas do we have left. Are you hungry? Do you need to use the toilet? All these other like stupid things. Yeah. So when COVID is over, maybe a Trans-Canada Via Rail tour would be in order.
What I'll do in this presentation is I'll talk about something negative and then include some type of tourism for Canada. And
that'll be nice.
But the reason I mentioned the Trans-Canada Highway is that our country is very beautiful. And if you are going to be on a bus where something negative will not happen, or on a train, it really is like during the day, parts of our country are amazingly stunning visually as well, whether it's the Rockies in the west or you go to the prairies in the middle or out near the Atlantic provinces. It really is just stunning, right, aesthetically. So like
what about the part from like Ottawa to the prairies?
Well, I mean,
have you done that?
I haven't, but I have no intention of doing that either.
My parents said on that journey, they said it was just trees, more trees. They'd wake up and it would be trees again.
Yeah.
And it would just go like that for a couple of days.
They say that if you're driving in that part on the highway, you could fall asleep and wake up and you'd still be on the road. Like nothing would happen because it's just flat,
hopefully, right? Well, you'd be shouldn't be falling asleep while you drive, I hope.
Okay, so this bus was actually leaving, was going west on Trans-Canada Highway from Portage-la-Prairie in Manitoba. Tim McLean, 22 years old, was a carny. A carnival barker. Just for those of people who don't know what a carny is, it's a slang term for someone who works at like carnivals that move from place to place. So they're part of the crew, So it seems like a fun job if you're young, I guess. So he had just finished a shift at a carnival in Edmonton. He was coming home to Winnipeg. So he got onto the bus. It left. He was just sitting in the back, the rear, one seat above, in front of the toilets, right? The bus stops at 6:55, Your Honor, 6:55 in Erickson, Manitoba. A new passenger by the name of Vince Lee gets in. Lee is tall. He's Asian Canadian. He's got a shaved head. He's wearing sunglasses. interesting fact, he was at the front of the bus initially, but then he decides to move to the back and sit next to McLean. McLean barely acknowledges the guy. He falls asleep with his headphones on. So while the guy is sleeping, some of the reports, because most of the information came from other passengers on board on their witness accounts, they say that Lee takes out a knife while McLean is sleeping and starts stabbing him in the neck and chest with it. So McLean is asleep. He doesn't even know what's happening, which is terrifying in itself, right? I always have this fear. I don't have a fear that I'll be stabbed at night, but I always have a fear that I won't be conscious when something bad happens to me. You know what I mean? So I can't like react to it, which is but like I don't know if you share in that fear, or if you just think, we like on planes when I sit next to people or whatnot, I don't think about being stabbed, but I just think about like the most disturbing thing is like if you're on an aisle or the middle seat, someone has to wake you up to go to the washroom in the middle of the night, and you're just like, just go over me, man, or just like, you know,
just climb over.
Everyone has to be so polite. You have to do that thing where you're like, oh, and then, but in mine, you're like, I was just sleeping, you know. This is why I fly first class only from now on.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay, so so when the bus driver notices what's happening, he pulls the bus to the side and he gets all the passengers out. He tries to go back and tries to save McLean with some other passengers, but the other guy, Lee, he takes out the knife and he's kind of like, you know, jabbing a little towards them. So they kind of move back. So this, again, warning. So Lee cuts off McLean's head and he shows it to the other passengers who are outside, right? And then there's reports that he starts actually eating some of McLean's flesh, which is pretty gross. So now you have, like, imagine this. It's like pretty much the middle of the night or evening. Sorry, it's the middle of Manitoba. It's cold because it's the prairies. It's cold. You have a bunch of people stranded on the middle of the highway, and this guy Lee, he's actually like cordoned off the bus, like, so he's inside and he's locked the door, so you can't go back in, right? And so he's got a knife, and people say that this guy is like just like pacing the bus, like going back and forth, and he's like he's defiling the corpse and eating parts of it as well. So people are really like freaking out here, right? So Dave, my first question to you is that if you were one of the passengers on the bus, like say you got off the bus, yeah, and like you're on the side of the highway, and like what's going through your brain at this moment? Are you just like, what the hell am I doing? Like, are you freaking out, post-traumatic stress, don't know what to do? Because some people, tell me your answer, then I'll tell you what some people were doing at that time.
I guess it depends. So where they stopped was quite isolated, if I remember.
Yes,
yeah, like adds to the PTSD element. But I would just get off the bus and run as fast as I could and just keep running. Yeah. And even if I wouldn't do hitchhiking, I wouldn't stick my thumb out. I would just keep going until I found a town and you know, get the hell out of there. But
so you wouldn't be a hero and try to like go back.
Oh no! Oh no way!
Yeah. Okay.
No chance.
Good. Yeah. So most passengers were pretty much hysterical during this point. They were crying, vomiting. Rightly so. I can understand if you saw someone's decapitated head. RCMP show up. RCMP is our national police force. So we have provincial and citywide ones. And not provincial. Sorry. Oh, you have a provincial, Ontario.
Just provincial.
Yeah.
I think BC has one too.
We might. No? Yeah. I'm not sure, but I know city for sure, national, and then provincial. So the RCMP, the national ones, show up. And they know that this guy can't leave anymore because they're cordoning off the area. Plus, the guy tried to leave, but the driver actually put on the emergency immobilizing system, so the bus doesn't move. You know, so that's a good thing on the driver, I guess. So so there's a big standoff at this point. Cars come and pick up the passengers, and they bring them to like a nearby town. So if you had ran there, you probably would have met the passengers.
Yeah, and they would have hated me. Yeah.
You would have been out of breath, but these guys, negotiators come in, tactical units come in, and then you know, they some people said that they heard Lee say that like, I have to stay on this bus forever, quote unquote. Like,
was there information on the response time? Like if you're in this rural part of Manitoba, right?
Yeah, I forgot the times. I did.
It can be quite hard.
It was hard, but apparently people got there pretty quickly. The RCMP wasn't bad. They probably dispatched from the nearest location. Just as a note to our listeners, if you join the RCMP, did you know this? If you join the RCMP and you're put into like some remote place in the middle of nowhere, I think you get paid more. So like
you do.
Yeah. So I know if you go up north and where no one ever wants to go, you get paid a lot of money, but it's boring. But it might be nice too. Get a couple books, police during the day, read during the night, freeze during the evenings, you know. But
But
most,
imagine you get called out to one of these things. Like, what's going through your head as an RCMP officer? For sure, you get trained for all sorts of scenarios, but
yeah,
you're still a human being. And I
yeah,
mean, I can't imagine they had ever dealt with anything on that scale.
totally. I mean, if you're a small town cop, what's the most like maybe like someone didn't pay their meter or like like my dog is lost or whatever it is. Like then suddenly you get a call that like someone's head's been decapitated. Totally. It's actually interesting. Just hold on to that thought. Something really unfortunate happens at the end, a couple of years afterwards, towards one of the officers who reported on the scene. But so Lee starts. Lee tries to. This is so stupid of him. I mean, he's already put himself into this. He tries to escape by breaking one of the windows on the bus. I don't know where he thought he would go. Like, RCMP tackle him down. They arrest him. He's shot with a taser twice. He's handcuffed and placed in the back of a cruiser. So parts of the body of the victim are placed in plastic bags, and they're found on the bus. But the ears, nose, and tongue are found in Lee's pockets, like of this guy. So like really, it's gross. And this is probably the grossest part. So after this, well, it's all downhill. After this, the victim's eyes and part of his heart were never recovered and are presumed to have been eaten by Lee. So like a very Hannibal Lecter thing going there. So just some background on Lee. He was 40 years old. He's from China. Super interesting. I think this is really interesting. He graduated from the Wuhan Institute of Technology with a bachelor's in computer science.
Wow.
Wuhan, yeah. He was in Beijing for 4 years. He immigrated to Canada in 2001. Apparently, he had an incident with the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, back in 03, 04, and he had been hospitalized. But here's the interesting thing: he worked a number of kind of various jobs in Winnipeg and in Edmonton, and he had really good reports from his employers. They said he was okay. He had a little trouble with the language, but no really mental illness or problems. But the only thing was about 4 weeks before this incident, he got fired from from Walmart, from having a disagreement with some of his colleagues. And like, I think that's okay. I mean, who wants to work at Walmart anyway? There's some multinational. Yeah. So apparently what happened was the night before, or sorry, the afternoon before he boarded the bus, he was in Edmonton. He apparently, like a couple hours even before boarding, he was sitting at a bus stop with his luggage. People say that they saw him at like 3 o'clock in the morning, just sitting there with his eyes open on a bench, wide open on a bench, waiting for the bus, which is weird. Apparently, the morning of the incident, he sold his laptop to a 15-year-old kid for $60. I guess he needed the cash or something like that. Apparently, the laptop was afterwards seized by the RCMP as evidence, and the boy who actually bought the laptop from them, he actually got a new laptop from the RCMP because he was so helpful in helping the RCMP with this case. So like. Oh, sorry, it wasn't from the RCMP. It was from another businessman who found the kid to be so honest that he gave him another laptop because he assisted.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, that's nice. Apparently, one of the witnesses said that during the attack, like Lee was pretty much just like totally calm. He was oblivious to what was happening, no rage. He was like a robot just stabbing a guy, which is scary, right? Like it's not even, there's like no processing whatsoever in your brain. You're just like, I guess this is how you stab. I don't know, like, yeah. And so just like dead inside, just doing it. And I wonder like if that's a psychological thing, if your brain shuts down. Sometimes I've heard that when you do horrible things, you don't even know you do them sometimes, and like it's just, you're just waking up afterwards.
It's like happening outside of you and your consciousness.
Yeah. Apparently, when he was in court, the only words he ever uttered, or the only words that he reportedly uttered, were pleas for someone to kill him, like because he didn't want to go through this. So in March 2009, so about 8-9 months later, he was found to be not to be criminally responsible for the murder. Rather, he was found to have some mental and psychiatric issues. So he was put into a high security mental health facility where he was until 2015. Apparently, over the years, he actually did really well mentally, like with his health. As he progressed in his journey, I guess he got more freedoms. He was able to go outside. He was then able to have supervised walks. He was able to have supervised visits into the nearest town, then unsupervised visits, and then he was able to go into a big city, but with a mobile phone. And eventually, he got to a point where he was able to not live in the facility anymore, but to stay in group homes. So where it would be more like, yeah, this is weird, where he was able to get like psychiatric help but not be in prison. So in February 2016, 7 years after the incident, he apparently changes his name to Will Baker, uh, which is
Okay.
a very common name for a Chinese Canadian gentleman. And he decides that he doesn't want to live in the group home anymore. He wants to live independently. And he wins the right to live alone based on the recommendation of the Criminal Code Review Board. So the board actually sides with him. What? Like, like this guy chopped off someone's head, and even if he was mentally unstable, he was able to get pretty much like parole to live by himself in society. No,
Was there any like did they not test him for whether he was on drugs while when he did the murder?
ooh,
Um,
I didn't read about it, but if
or if he
they
was off his meds?
off his meds, yeah.
Yeah.
But if he was off his meds, I think it would result in the same outcome, a mental institute, right? Because it would have gone to the fact that he needed meds because he was mentally unstable. I think that's just my opinion, right?
I just find it hard to imagine someone without the influence of some psychotic drug is able to be that crazy um, and commit such an act.
I
It's wild.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
I
there was
mean,
that thing a few years ago. You remember bath salts or something? There's some drug where people were terrified that if someone took it, they would go around and like
yeah, I remember.
cannibalize people, and they were possessed and acted like zombies. Um, but yeah, this is just such a bizarre case.
In one report I read, he said the reason he had done it was to save the people from the aliens. That was,
Okay.
I mean, that's not something you hear every day, and I don't think you'd have to kill someone to save them from the aliens. But I
No.
think not only the murder horrific, the way it was done was horrific as well, and just the unexpectedness of it too, right? In such a public place.
So like
Uh,
when they interviewed, like you said, he didn't say much, right? When during the
the trial.
trial, or he said very few words. So they never really figured out, like, was he going somewhere on that bus, or was he just going on the bus to like with the intention to kill someone?
I don't think
Um,
he that information I didn't come across, but I think from what I've seen, I think he was very quiet and he just accepted his fate in trial. I mean, the
wow.
fate was mental asylum, right? Not jail.
Mm.
And then just 3 years back in 2017, the Manitoba Criminal Code Review Board ordered his discharge. He was granted an absolute discharge, which means there's no legal obligations or restrictions pertaining to Lee's living. Pretty much, he's a free citizen at
So
this
he's
point.
free.
So you could be on another Greyhound bus sitting next to the dude, if you notice him. There's nothing afterwards. I don't know where he is. I don't know what he's done. But it is scary, and I kind of feel like I'm not a lawyer. Maybe you're a lawyer that I don't know about, but but I kind of feel like that is insanity, right? Like if someone is just 8 years back killed someone, or 9 years back killed someone, well, not eight, yeah, 8 years back killed someone, and then just like served his time and then got out, and this is like I think. I feel like if this happened in another place in the world where people are perhaps the Canadian judicial system, I think, is a little bit more based on kind of rehabilitation and back into society,
Mm.
whereas in other places it's a little bit more imprisoned. I just think it's fascinating. It's scary. Do you remember this period in your life? I totally remember this. It was a year after we graduated. I remember turning on the news and it was all over the news and people were freaking out.
Yeah. Like I said, I was on the Greyhound bus coming back from Montreal to Ottawa,
Yeah.
and smartphones were becoming a thing then. And
Yeah.
someone got a message on their phone saying, "Dude, get off the bus. There was like a murder on a Greyhound." Um, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't automatically mean that everyone who's on a Greyhound bus is in danger. It's just because one
Yeah.
lunatic did something, but it did make it that much more terrifying. Thankfully, I was sitting next to my friend, and I had like the window seat, so
Yeah.
I would
You knew
kind
your
of.
friend. Yeah.
I knew him. I knew him. I thought I knew him. Um, but yeah, that was horrible, and I think it was international news because that is quite a spectacular and horrific murder.
What's the longest you've been on a Greyhound bus for? Is it just Ottawa Montreal, or have you done Ottawa Toronto or Ottawa anywhere else?
I did Ottawa, Toronto, and actually, now that we mention it, this Greyhound topic, I'm never going to go on a Greyhound again
Yeah,
because
totally.
the time I went from Ottawa to Toronto, I can't remember what I was doing or why I was going to Toronto. I rarely have any business there.
Yeah.
But it was about a 4 or 5 hour bus ride
Yeah.
from Ottawa. And then what happened was it was at night. Normally it's a super busy road, the 416, 417. I'm not sure which one it is.
Yeah.
And it's one of the busiest roads in all of North America.
Yeah.
But at night it was like 2 a.m, 1 a.m. It was pretty quiet. And the bus driver had missed the turnoff on the highway to get to the station.
Oh, really?
And what he does is, instead of like keep going and to like find a roundabout way to the station, he stops on the highway and he puts his four-way lights on and reverses on the highway. And people on the bus were screaming, we're gonna die, this guy's crazy. And so he just reversed, and you heard beep beep beep, cars are going by 120 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
And he just casually just pulled back and went into that off ramp. And that was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
So now that you mentioned this topic, there's some pretty traumatic things that I remember on these Greyhound journeys.
I've done the Ottawa-Toronto trip, and I find it to be a nightmare end to end and on the bus itself. You know, in Toronto, you have to go to that station in downtown in the middle of the night or whatever, and then there's like all those people lining up there, and the station looks like it was built in like the 40s, and then you have to take this trip, and then when you get to Ottawa, it's right by the highway into the city, and you have to get off. I just don't find bus travel to be enjoyable. You know what I mean? If I was a student or younger, I totally I understand money and then lifestyle and friends and limited. But now I would not take a bus unless I really had to. I just find it like really uncomfortable. I would take a train, as you said at the beginning of the thing. I find trains extremely comfortable, extremely nice, and just like you can read a book, have a coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I find, I think we talked about it a bit in the phobia episode last week. I don't like enclosed spaces. I'm a bit claustrophobic, and I get that feeling on buses. And another traumatic experience wasn't as bad as those other ones, but it was when I was traveling with my family. We'd go to the UK every other year because most of my family is in the UK, and we would often land in London, and sometimes we would go straight to the countryside where my grandparents are from.
Yeah.
And normally it's like around the same thing for a 4 or 5 hour journey. Yeah. But this particular occasion, there was traffic jam in the countryside, and we were stuck on this bus for like 7 hours, 8 hours. And I was going a bit crazy because we were stuck next to a guy. He was, I don't know what the politically correct term is these days, traveler, not a gypsy. But he had loads of rings. He had very long hair, hadn't bathed in some time. So the smell next to me was not great. I was getting very nauseous. And I think I resolved then and there that I think I told my parents, I'm never going on a bus ever again to see these people. I'm either going to take a train or rent a car or go in some other way.
I think it's a good experience to go through because it teaches you a lot, and like it helps you be adaptable, but it also
builds resilience. And
But now that you and I are pretty much in our mid-30s, like I don't feel that we have to go through that anymore because if we have kids, they can go through it and experience it. I did my time because I have also been in similar situations. I one time took a train. This was an unfortunate situation in Vietnam. Have I told you this story? I might have, but
I don't think so.
It was a 16-hour train from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi. I might get those confused, but those are the two major cities in Vietnam. And I get to the station. Because things are cheaper, I buy first class or whatever it is. But first class is a bedding. You can sleep. Sorry, it's not a sitting. It's not a sitting compartment. You can sleep. But when I get to it, it's like it's like beds here, here, and here. So I take the top one. So it's me and a family of 5 Vietnamese people, and like no communication. I'm on the bottom. I remember now. I'm on the bottom, and it's 1, 2, 3 there, right? And so no communication. They're just like really no consideration whatsoever. They're just like partying, drinking, like grandma's with them, like And so we started in the evening, and like it was so frustrating that in the morning, I don't know if you know, but some of the older trains, the place where you sleep also double as like benches,
Yeah, I
because
know
you
those.
can eat. So they all like sat by my feet, like starting to eat without even waking me up and stuff like that. Like it's not like I wanted to eat with them, but like I was sleeping, you know. So somehow through broken English, we swapped. I said, okay, I'll take yours, you take on the bottom. And so like I'm on the top, and there's still like 12 hours left on this trip, you know. Couldn't eat anything. All the food was gross and pork based, and like I'm a Muslim, so I can't eat pork.
Mm.
I didn't have enough time at each stop to just run out and grab something because I didn't know. Washrooms were destroyed within the first 5 minutes. You know what I mean? So like I
Mm.
really considered just jumping off this train in the middle of Vietnam, you know, but I didn't know how I'd get to the next
Oh
city.
no.
Thankfully, I met some Canadians who were a couple compartments down, and so I kind of hung out with them for a while, and like, you know, but then they got off, and then I just sucked it up, and I got to the next station. And when I got there, I was in such a piss mood, like that's so horrible. I had to get it. I remember yelling at this guy who was like, "Oh, you want a taxi?" I was like, "I don't want a taxi. Leave me alone." Like, you know.
Yeah.
So I understand, but these are all good experiences, I think, you know, in life, and like it teaches character, it builds resilience. It's good to do once or twice, you know.
What about Trans-Siberia? That's a very famous train journey. Do you know anybody who's done that, or have you
I
done that?
don't. I don't. But I think you and I, if we wear our nice suits and robes, we can sit in first class, smoking our pipes and reading the newspapers. And
I'm not sure that even the first class compartments in Trans-Siberia is of that caliber.
is it okay? Then we'll take the
No.
highest one. But I would love to do. I think it'd be a fun journey. There's a cool one there. There's one that goes through Africa, I've heard, which is supposed to be really nice. There's one that I don't know if it still exists or not, but it started in Istanbul and it goes to China,
Oh
no,
yeah, they've
Russia,
well, there's the Orient Express, which is a real
Orient.
train, I
Yeah,
believe. And they've revived that one, but it's more of like a luxury train
yeah.
where like people pay a lot of money for the experience.
Ta ta
Um,
ta. Yeah.
ta 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 ta,
Ta, ta, ta.
which would be kind of cool, I think.
Yeah. I,
Um,
I didn't see it, but I went to Mauritania once, and I wanted to see the world's longest train. It's about 2 kilometers long. It takes rocks and minerals from the middle of the country out to
I've
the
heard of
coast,
this.
and people
Yeah,
ride it and stuff like that. I didn't see it. I didn't
I
get to
wouldn't
do it.
dare. Yeah.
I mean, when Sid mentioned to us about the trains in India, I mean, how there's not enough trains. That's why people kind of overload them. Yeah, I mean, I worked at a train company over a summer once, a couple years back, like the Rocky Mountaineer train company. It's a
Oh,
fancy one that goes from BC to the Rockies, and it's for rich people, and there's like see-through compartments and stuff. I definitely would do it if I had the chance and if I had the ability. I mean, I would do the Via Rail, the Canadian one. That'd be fun, I think. And if I had nothing to do and sit around, drink coffee all day, and
sounds
do that.
nice.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice thing to do with the family and like see the country. I would, if there were other ways to see our beautiful country without taking a bus or a car or a plane, because planes can also, you don't see anything, right? I would definitely take that opportunity. If I have the ability, a nice drive across or a nice train, I apologize, across would be beautiful. But
Yeah, we took some overnight trains, so the sleeper carriages, kind of like what you mentioned. There was an occasion where we were traveling from Rome to uh, Venice, I think it
yeah,
was, and normally it's a pretty um, relatively quick journey, even though it's a long distance. So you can do it in a day.
okay,
But then there's also a sleeper train you can do, and that's quite cool. I was a bit apprehensive at first. I was like, I'm not going to sleep on this thing. It's going to be a bit grimy to do, but it was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I managed to sleep. And the thing is, you don't have to worry about missing your stop, because I'm like, what if we like sleep
yeah,
through
yeah,
and end up in like Austria or Eastern Europe somewhere.
yeah.
Um, but like each compartment is organized by like where the stop is, so they stick you into one where it's like you're getting
Oh,
off in Venice, so we'll knock on your door and won't
yeah,
wake anybody else up.
yeah,
And we had paid for one, kind of like what you mentioned, where it was 4 people,
yeah,
and there was a risk that there would be like strangers
yeah,
in the space, but thankfully it was just me and my girlfriend.
yeah,
And it was kind of a nice luxury. I think I got the top bunk. No, I got the bottom bunk.
yeah.
Um, and they gave us in the morning an Italian newspaper, a coffee, and a croissant. So
Nice.
that was a very nice experience, I have to say.
I think
So European
you're
train travel is really,
yeah.
really nice.
Yeah, I was going to say you've lived in Europe for a while now. Train travel is accessible, it's affordable,
It's the
uh,
dream.
it's the dream. Yeah, I did Austria to Hungary, that rail, and that was really lovely too. And nice coffees. Not a long trip as well. I would definitely do it. There's supposed to be there's supposed to be a really beautiful one in India that you can do across the country. I think you might have to get on and off, but because India is a huge place. So we should go on a trip. We should report live from from
We'll
a
do it.
train
We'll
trip.
turn this into a vlog.
A vlog. Anyways, I'll finish up with the story. Here's some interesting
Sure.
facts I found about this story. So now that we've gone through the gruesome stuff, some interesting things. The week following the attack, Greyhound Canada announced it was pulling a series of nationwide advertisements, which included the slogan, "There's a reason you've never heard of bus rage." So they were going to have this come out, but they were like, maybe we shouldn't.
Bad timing.
Bad timing. After the incident, PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, attempted to run an ad in the Portage Daily Graphic comparing the killing of McLean to the consumption of animals. The paper's publisher refused to run the ad. I think that's a good choice. PETA can, I
Yes.
think, be a little aggressive sometimes, like I find.
Just a
But
bit.
just a bit. The family of Tim McLean has brought a lawsuit of 150,000 against Greyhound, the Attorney General of Canada, and Vince Lee. Interesting. I'm not sure on the outcome of the results, but I guess Greyhound because it happened on their thing. The Attorney General maybe because they didn't give Vince Lee a harsher sentence, and Vince Lee for committing the crimes. So I think this would be
That's a
civil
tough
suit.
one. I mean,
Yeah.
my condolences to the family, but I would have a tough time with going after Greyhound on that one because
Totally.
having traveled and you have the same experience, there's zero security. I mean, they just check that you've bought a ticket, and
Yeah,
that's the only
totally.
thing. So like maybe they should have had more of a duty of care on there.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Do you agree with trying to go after the Attorney General for not having a harsh enough sentence? This is a civil suit. Remember, this would
well,
be not a
yeah.
criminal. Yeah, yeah.
I think what happened with him being released is a very tough one because I've read other stories and I won't be able to cite the names because I forget. But there have been cases where it's quite often that killers will plead insanity. It's often like the defense lawyers, their main thing. If they're just like a serial killer, mass murderer, done something really terrible, their almost default option is this person's crazy, and then it helps to like, I guess, give them a lighter sentence rather than if they're actually a rational, serious, normal person committing an act. But like by definition, an irrational person doesn't like murder someone unless it's self-defense. So yeah, I think there've been cases where like they're just out and out killers and they got real problems. Maybe they are a bit disturbed and there's a chance that they would commit the act again. And so they turned out to be model prisoners. They, made their bed. They read bedtime stories to the other prisoners and did knitting club in the prison. And then they were released and they started killing a bunch of people as soon as that happened. So
like, it was just an act, pretty much.
Just an act. So I would not. Maybe he was allowed out and to be free again, but man, put it like a ankle bracelet or something on him. Have a camera on him at all times and metal detector when he leaves the house.
Their argument, I don't know, but I mean, I totally agree with you, first of all, but their argument will probably be both like, listen, he's been found innocent. He's done his time and he's out now, so there's no legal obligation, plus money, right? It costs money to watch people and like track them. But I totally agree. Like if I ever saw him, like, how, for example, when child pedophiles or rapists or whatnot are released, you always have to know where they are, and then people in your community are made aware of it.
There's a register,
register. So something like that could also be aware, because like, who's to say this guy won't go off again, right? And so like, I don't know. It's tough and it's difficult in this situation. But speaking of which, apparently a couple years back, 2 passengers on that bus in 2011, they filed a suit against Lee, Greyhound, and the RCMP and the Canadian government for being exposed to the heading. So they were the beheading. They were seeking $3 million in damages and they got declined. So like that's the truth. And then the sad thing was one of the officers who reported to the scene, like the one who had never reported to anything even close to this, he committed suicide a few years later due to PTSD,
Really?
So, yeah.
Like, did they have evidence that it was connected to this?
I guess so. I read it was PTSD. I guess apparently I think they proved it, that maybe, his spouse or his family had mentioned things as well. But I mean, I can imagine seeing something that gruesome, that like you just couldn't deal with it and handle it. I think cops really go through, and like emergency service people, they go through a lot that a lot of us can't handle. They see death on a more frequent basis, and then really just like the most horrific parts of humanity. So it's sad. I mean, like I don't know what I would have done too, but even if I was a passenger, if I was the driver, if I was a cop, I think it would be a lifelong stain on my life. You know what I mean? Like one of those really just horrific events that are really hard to kind of overcome personally.
I don't know how I would ever be able to come back from that if I was a passenger on that bus. I wouldn't be able to function at work, like just being able to trust people around you.
Yeah.
It would all be broken. So I wonder what the outcomes were with some of these people on the bus, whether they struggled with their jobs and their family life afterwards.
Yeah. But to
Yeah.
let our listeners know, we are a peaceful country. Things like this happen once in a blue moon. We are nice people. I apologize on behalf of the system for what happened. Please do come. Greyhounds are not horrible as we've made them out to be. If you're
Don't sue us.
don't sue us. They're a good way to see the country. We're nice people. Like I don't think murders are one in a few in our country. They're not that.
But they're quite rare of like this variety. But I think when they happen in Canada like this, they're so outrageous that they become international news, because there is that other one, I think around the same time, maybe a couple of years afterwards. And it was this guy, he was in like these romantic relationships. You'd like maybe meet these people online in these gay forums. And then he ended up like killing them.
Luca
Magnotta, isn't it?
Yeah. He killed the kid in Montreal.
The crazy thing was he was like sending body parts to like political parties and to all sorts of people across Canada. And I remember that it was like the Conservative Party received like a toe in the mail. And
totally. Something happened out in Vancouver too. Yeah.
And then it became international because they ended up finding the guy in Berlin internet cafe, and he was like reading about his own crime. And then the guy was like, "That's you. What are you doing?"
That guy is in jail, by the way. He's serving, I think, a life sentence. So
yeah, that guy should not be allowed out.
I totally remember that case too, because like it was all over the news, and like it was kind of like a national thing because the body parts were kind of going across the country, so it kind of connected everything back, even though it was like based in Montreal, right? And so like but like it just don't there's no restrictions on what you can put in the mail. Like no one scans anything or sees it. Like if it's something's mushy or like it's just smelly or leaky, or like the Canadian Postal Service is
I think they weren't primed for body parts, so they were mostly primed for drugs and counterfeit stuff. So you'd think they would have something ready for a toe or a finger or something like that.
Well, we could spin it by saying that's how good our Canadian Postal Service is.
That's how good.
We can get anything from place to place in the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty affordable too. The Postal Service is not that expensive in our country, so
it just takes a while. I mean, the thing is, in COVID times, everyone's sending these Amazon packages, and Canada Post does a lot of that kind of service. So my parents are saying, like, I don't know if you're aware, like Canada has gone from like everyone having their own individual mailbox to there's a community mailbox.
Yeah,
and
so like everything
they're not suiting the purpose anymore because everyone's ordering boxes and boxes of Amazon stuff, and you got to go and.
Is that because just to make it easier on the delivery guys and the mailmen, instead of going from house to house, just a centralized location?
Yeah, it's probably a nightmare for the delivery guys in winter to go house to house, and probably better just to put it in one central location.
Yeah. Do you guys did you ever used to order anything? Like you've been out of country for a while, like me, but did you ever do Amazon or eBay or anything like that before leaving, or did you do it now in the Netherlands?
No, I mean, pretty much everybody around me is an Amazon person, but not me. I think you know me pretty well. I'm a very simple guy. I don't like buying stuff. I only buy clothes when like there's holes and things are falling apart. Yeah. So I really don't buy much stuff. I have the Kindle, and I'll buy some books on the Amazon Kindle shop. But no, but like most of my friends, they're like on Prime, and they're just. It's so easy once you're on. It's order, and like
one click buy.
One click, so easy, and it shows up the next day, and the drones come by and drop everything off.
Yeah, it's. I When we were living together back in university, one time I did eBay 1 or 2 times when we were living in that house in Ottawa, and they delivered to the house. Do you remember eBay? I don't know if that still exists or not, but
eBay
like,
still, yeah, it does. Yeah,
I don't know if it's as
I
popular.
got scammed on eBay, so I stopped using it. I thought
Yeah,
it was pretty scammy. A lot of the stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a thing.
there you go. Anyways, I hope I haven't given people nightmares or any bad taste of our country. We are a nice country. It's just an unfortunate incident, and it happened during our lives. And I vividly remember this watching the news, and people were just freaking out. But I thought, as two Canadians, we should probably go back to our home country for something. Maybe we can do something very positive next week, a positive light.
Yeah, next week I'll think of something that's like sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Very friendly and positive.
Well,
But that, yeah.
depending on what happens today in the world, right? We might not have a next time anymore.
Okay.
The internet might be revoked. It might not exist. But
yeah. Well, we'll think of something.
and stay positive, people. Leave us a comment, subscribe, like, and let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. But Dave, I hope you have a good November the 3rd. I hope the results.
Please enjoy. Don't stay up all night. Get some sleep, and yeah, have fun tomorrow morning.
There you go. Tomorrow morning. All right, guys. Bye.
Peace.